Guys, welcome. Thanks again for our weekly conversation. And if you're watching this live, welcome to the third conversation. And if you're going to be watching this on replay, thanks for watching. And please let us know and just put replay on the comment section and also give us a comment. And don't forget to subscribe to get more of these conversations in the future. I think last week we kind of pointed at something which was, looking at the ways of being, of habits. You could say habits, or they could be stereotypes. It doesn't really matter. What we're looking at is we're acknowledging what's present, what's out there, whether we believe it or not, whether we think it's true. I think it's good to just first of all acknowledge it, recognize it, and we spoke about certain things that are sort of unworkable ways of being or ways of being that constraints us as Filipinos. So we could continue with on that line of thought. What do you guys think? There's a few more that we haven't. I'm sure there's a few more that we haven't really talked about. I mean, we talked about time, right? How we as a culture don't have a powerful relationship with time, so that's one of the things. And then we talked about what was that about? Not speaking out, right?
Indirect communication.
Yeah, indirect communication and those things. So I think we could expand that conversation and see where we go. I was actually looking at Google and I just typed unworkable ways of being for Filipinos. And there's a few articles that have from different sources, and it's really interesting their take on, of course, some of the things that were said were all the things that are quite obvious. We know it all the time, like colonial mentality, the mañana habit. And what's interesting is I didn't realize that we have what they call a celebration culture, a fiesta culture, that we put too much importance to it, to a point where we spend like a lot of money to have like grand birthdays or even fiestas, and making sure that everybody knows we're serving great food and things like that. That was something that was sort of off my radar until I saw that, and I said, "Wow, that's kind of interesting." In a sense.
We have, you know what, George,
Yeah.
you're talking about Fiesta.
Mm.
That's an institution in my province. That whenever it's Fiesta, all the members of the family go home and
Mhm.
really celebrate the Fiesta every May. And it's just not like it's every most family in the town, in the barangay.
Mm.
They really come home, and then there's a pasayaw, there's a dance in the plaza. Like day one, it's for the balikbayan. Day two, it's for the youth. Like they have those kinds of celebration, and it's really like it's. I grew up really going to that fiesta. Like it's a very important memory of mine, and it's all out. Like they kill two big pigs in preparation for the fiesta. Like every household has a scheduled one pig just for the fiesta. And then you go house hopping. Right after church, you go to every houses, you eat, and then you go to next house, you eat again, and then you get third house, you eat again. And they don't have to invite you. When it's fiesta, it's automatic people come to your house from also different towns. Right?
Mm.
Like they call it Maki Fiesta. But it's very
Yeah.
tiring when I was young. Very tiring. All people who comes to the house, you need to bless, right? They like as a part of the culture, right? But
Yeah.
but it's
But the way it was written, I mean, yeah. Is that, first of all, is that still prevalent even now at this time? I mean, I
Yep.
I,
yes.
I know. Wait, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
maybe in the provinces, yeah.
Even in
Even
Oh.
some cities like San Juan, it's the Fiesta of San Juan. When people pour water on you. So San Juan's
Mm.
a city in Metro Manila already, and barangays still have fiestas. Like our barangay still. Well, we don't.
Hmm.
It's not like in the provinces where people go house to house, but we still celebrate fiestas. Any given day, you go through the streets of Manila and you see, all these banderitas I don't know. It really depends maybe on the community, but I think it's a bigger deal in the provinces, but it hasn't escaped Manila cosmopolitan, hasn't diluted that. So,
But
hi, JB Cesario.
the context that it was written was that it's more of it's not so much the fiesta itself, but it's the culture of this celebration. Like we over celebrate anything, parties, graduations, and it's
Yeah.
like it's an opportunity to
Yeah.
kind of show off, which kind of ties into another thing that was said also, which is the Utang culture. That we go bonga, we go all out, but even when we don't have the money, we borrow money for that, which we also have that culture of sort of like borrowing what we need to just meet. you know we can't even meet what we need on a regular basis, but we need to borrow because we do other things that are unnecessary. I think that's what I read. That's what I was reading into the article, and that's kind of interesting. And I question, is that really Filipino, or is that really more universal? I think everybody does that, right? Everybody spends more money than they can afford. I think it's beyond Filipino culture, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
So based on the chart, it shows that
Mhm.
Filipino is present oriented, meaning we don't care if we don't have money in the future. What's important is that for the present moment, I get to spend and show off just how much food I can serve on the table. So, and the other thing about all of these feasts, like we're the country with 14 legal holidays or something of that nature. And then if you take a look at I don't know what it's called. It's this book that you find in church. It lists down the feast of each saint for every given day of the year. So I have no idea how many there are, but for sure it becomes an excuse. And in terms of space now, our orientation is public, meaning the more people there are, the better. So for example, in the US, you have one SUV and there's only one person inside it. In the Philippines, you have the FX or the
Yeah.
Revo, where where you're like, how many people are going to fit in there? Like 10 people inside a tiny space. So we like crowded stuff and we like to live for the moment.
Oh God,
Huh.
crowded stuff like malls. Look at our malls, man. The worst place to be during this pandemic. Gee, I get goosebumps just thinking about our malls.
What do you think is the source of that? I mean, what's like the more underlying source of that? I mean, I think that's kind of like the symptom, right? That's what's out there. But what's behind all that?
I still think the climate has a lot to do with that, Taljor. The fact that we don't really get winters, everything is like sunny and amazing. Yes, it rains, but we don't really. Not a lot of us die from rains, and so that created this culture that life is so good, life is so great. Why do we need to plan for the future? Just live for the now, think of the now, and just focus on the now.
Hmm. Interesting. I mean, in a sense, it's kind of like, that's kind of cool. That's good, right? But at the same time, there's a constraining nature to it, right? Where does it go off? Okay. I mean, there's many more. I'm trying to remember what else. Oh, you were saying the hiya. That's another thing that was mentioned. It was like the hiya culture. It's like the shyness culture, right? The article was saying something like we were taught to be shy and timid, or else we would be judged if we were assertive. It's not a good character to be assertive. So from early on, just like what Smart Heart was talking about, we are taught not to say anything and to be overly respectful, overly shy, and magpakumbaba kind of stuff. To a point, even if it doesn't work, we continue doing it.
I read somewhere, I don't know, I saw it on a TV show. Some American men, they say that they'd prefer Filipino women because they're submissive and reticent and obedient.
Mhm.
Good luck. Which is, if you really look at it, if you met any Filipino woman, yes,
Mhm.
I don't really know. That's furthest from the truth. And even if you look at Maria Clara, they say, Maria Clara, dapat Maria Clara ka. But if you read the novel, have you read the novel? furthest from the truth.
Isn't she somehow of a rebel, subversive,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
I mean, she also went out with the wrong guy. She got stuck in a convent because of her rebellious ways. But when they say Maria Clara, you have to be, behind the fan and very feminine. So people
Right.
don't really know the stereotype that's being portrayed. So it's curious. And it's funny because, like, if I'm going down that track, right, the Philippines is a matriarchal society more than patriarchal. You might see, but if you look at it, like in my own family, and then in the families of many of my friends and just around me, you see how this hasn't been diluted by the imposition of the male hierarchy by the Catholic Church. It really still is the woman in the family that's the strongest, right, Weng? So I don't know. Which I think, so these American guys who come here looking for Filipino wives to be submissive, I think they'll get more than they bargain for. I don't know. Must be some other culture that's like that, but not to my knowledge. I don't know if it still exists in the I don't think so. Even the provinces, you mess with a Filipino woman, she'll chop your head off. Or something.
Lorena Bobbitt.
Di ba?
Yeah. No, I think that's always on the surface. I mean, this is the thing we're talking about, the whole passive aggressiveness, right?
Right.
So that's it's that mahinhin, it's that, very shy and easy,
Timid.
but underneath is this volcano waiting to erupt.
Correct.
And
But
Yeah,
you
if-
know what? Growing up, that's really part of the culture as a young woman. But like I don't know, because probably because my mom is from the province. I grew up like you're not allowed to wear short shorts. Like by this time you have to be home. There's no like really like I grew up manang. Diba? They call it manang.
But can I just double click on what Weng said about how what we've learned from childhood as a culture has now created who we are right now. No, I remembered Aljor the parable of the elephant, right? I mean, you tie the elephant, and then after a few months or years, you remove it, and it still thinks that it's still tied to that post, and so it doesn't leave, right?
right.
That we do that for an entire generation. That's what happens to us as an entire generation. But I also want to check with you guys that with the proliferation of technology, the culture is now changing and shifting. There's a shift in culture that our kids are experiencing that we never had before, because all of the influences that they get from the internet is changing how they think life should be or things should be.
Right. But then don't you think that's also like having the pendulum go all the way to the other side? What I'm saying is, just as much as people believe the stereotypes, that we ourselves believe the stereotypes, at some point the shift because of technology creates a different stereotype, which isn't really true about who we are, but yet because it's so prevalent, and because the conversation is there and nobody's sort of responsible for that conversation, that it could shift the pendulum all the way to the other side, and our young people would grow up having a different kind of stereotype, and yet it's still a stereotype, and it could be a total rebellion from how they think it is or it was. My point of what I'm saying is, I think I don't know how we can create a conversation such that it empowers that shift, rather than just allowing media, allowing the internet to create that conversation without any kind of anybody leading or reshaping it. Do you know what I'm saying? I've been here now for almost 20 years, right? And just in that time that I've been here, the shift in culture from in less than 20 years, just here in Manila, it's not the same as when I first arrived. I could feel that, just the way people talk and the conversations I have with people and what they're dealing with. It's almost like some parts are almost like Los Angeles. I mean, the way people are being, right, to a point where it's even be over that, like type A personalities, go get them, don't mess with me, kind of stuff. and do whatever it takes to succeed, that kind of stuff. And that's a lot of what's going on right now, especially with the young people. So that came from the advent of technology, how we now can communicate with each other so quickly, and information are coming in with YouTube channel and Facebook and things like that. So people are just getting ideas from everybody, and and as we know, who is shaping those ideas, right? We know now that a big organization, a big corporation can actually shape people, groups of people, through what is, you open up your Google and you will get what the Google bubble tells you should be getting. That could actually impact culture. That could shift with the culture. And who's responsible for that? And what can we do such that it doesn't go the opposite end of the spectrum of the pendulum, without people having like a real choice on who we decide we are.
So, Alder, is it inside of enrollment of that possibility of that culture that we want to create?
I don't have, like I said, I don't have a solution, but I see that there needs to be some kind of like a group of people standing for some possibility of what this nation, what these group of people could possibly be like, and enroll them in that kind of future. Like for instance, we have been working with each other for the past 10 years now, and having conversations for possibility for people, but that voice is drowned by everything else. How do you get that voice heard by young people? How do you get this voice heard by people that are actually here in the Philippines that could make a difference in the future? What do we do? That's my question.
Start young, Alder. We have to start young.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're talking about provinces, right? Like the way you're speaking of the province, and I know because I also, when as a kid, I came from the province, and it's a different life from Manila. I mean, a different world, totally. Yeah, but yet with this and that, they're watching something that's like all the first world societal ills and all the first world bullshit. They're seeing that too, and like, oh, okay, that's what it is to be successful. That's what it is to make it in life, right? So how do we sift that? How do we create a different conversation to actually make a difference? I have no idea. And I think that's why we're having this conversation.
When I was
Yes.
younger, 10 years ago, right, when we were together in this education, and coming from a manang, like, I grew up as a manang, you work hard because, you need to provide for family and everything. It's a personal choice. I think for me, it's a personal choice. It's a personal discernment. And when you go transform in that, everything around in my environment also shifted. My relationship with my parents, my relationship with my son. So now, coming from a world we're in, I'm not allowed to talk back. Right? When you talk back, either you'll be slapped in the face because you're not allowed to express yourself. It's disrespectful. From now, this young man is very self-expressive to me. And and I just listen and allow him to express himself. And when he's very emotional, I allow him to be in his emotion. We'll talk after your emotion. As two person. So, but now, when you look at it, when you listen to it, it sounds okay. But my mom is also questioning that. Why are you allowing him to be like that? And if I answer her, I'm allowing him to express himself. No, that's not. That's his term. She shouldn't raise your voice on you. You're the mother, blah blah blah, right? But since I'm grounded with the relationship I want to create with him, I make a stand for it. And then I explain. But I like what you're saying, Aljore. How do you expose that kind of workability in the provinces? How do you spread it out to other families, to other mothers? You're saying something, Tech Guru?
No, I was just going to ask you, Smart Heart, what do you think made the difference for you? Because the first time I met Smart Heart, she would speak at the lowest volume possible. She wouldn't talk in front of people. She would always just be meek and be very, very quiet. But now you speak so confidently and so eloquently, and you speak, with a very, very commanding voice. What do you think made the difference for you that can maybe answer the monk's question?
A better microphone.
I'm laughing at your comment because my automatic is, what are you saying? Like, I don't know. I okay, I got what you said, and then and I accept what you said. Okay, but the automatic, I think the automatic is, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. It's always there. But I think what shifted is recognizing that if I don't shift myself, it's going to impact my son. Like that's the big turning point. If I'm going to be silent, if I'm not going to work on my own development, at one point I have a context when we were doing the education. My development is in service to my son. Like, who I am is in contribution to my son. Who I am is in contribution to people around me. And that at one point, that's the place I stand for. I'm not saying, if you ask me, Tech Guru, after this video, there's a lot, what did I say? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's a constant struggle for me. But I think at a certain point, because of you guys, listening to me, acknowledging me, I got to find my stand. That if they see contribution to what I'm saying, then it must be a contribution. And who am I to question that? So thank you for your question.
So what I'm hearing from the smart heart is that she took charge of the conversation. Like she took a stand that my kid is going to be like this. But not all parents are like that, because especially if they're working, and what do they do? They buy an iPad or they buy a cell phone, and then they give it to their kid and say, okay, entertain yourself. And when the kid starts looking at TikTok, for example, now everyone wants to be a dancer, or everyone wants to, I don't know, like come up with lip syncing stuff on the internet. And so as Tech Guru mentioned, we have a whole generation of kids all over the world. Doesn't matter what country you're from, as long as you have internet access, there's this identity of what young people should be like.
It's global, right? This is no longer about a particular country. It's starting to become a global identity now.
And what's scary about that is that we know, and we have actual evidence that, some big entity can actually shape the behavior of people based on what they give us, what filters into our bubble. That's a challenge for us. And, some force can actually continue creating the stereotypes to be present for people to a point where the future generations can continue to believe the stereotypes that you and I are talking about right now. I mean, we are pointing at the stereotypes, and I know for myself, and I know for some of you, we're not really saying that it's true about us, right? But that it's true that that's a stereotype about us. And I think it's important that we actually acknowledge that, so that we know what we're dealing with, and then see what's possible in the future, that these stereotypes can be altered, but by the people, not just some outside source saying again who we should be, what should be the modern person be, or the modern Filipino, or the modern man, the modern woman will be, right, like that. So in other words, what would it take to have our own voice in the matter of our future, of who we are going to be as individuals and as a collective, as a nation? And that's an interesting thing to look at.
When life was so much simpler growing up, I don't know if for those of you who grew up in the provinces, but we had a model. Our generation, at least, had a model of how to behave, pretty much. And the model was called Sesame Street. Remember, Arvi? Francis?
Sunny
Yeah,
days.
and then
It's out of the song, same song.
right. Aside from teaching us English, we also learned cooperation. We also learned what it was to live like in a diverse neighborhood. Maybe it's because this was the only thing available on TV for us then. And then Batibot came along, which was for Aldor's information. Batibot was Sesame Street in the Philippines.
Philippines,
So
Philippines.
right, we
Yeah.
had characters like Pong Pagong instead of Big Bird and Kiko Matching instead of Oscar the Grouch, and they taught values. Back in the day when, yeah, again, we were captive audience. This was all that was available on TV after they took the robots and the Voltes 5 and Mazinger Z away from us. But that was the medium then. In the background, hopefully people learn to cooperate. I see many people in my generation who are not doing that right now, but at least there was a message out there, even if it came from a foreign production company, about how, this is how it is to be a good human being. So I don't know. I don't know. In this day and age, I mean, my nephews right now, they play a lot of those computer game. I mean, on their tablets, and the words that can come out of they're 9 years old. The words that can come out of their mouth, nobody ever talks like that around them. But it's the environment of technology
Sure.
where they say all these
Sure.
bad words, and they learn to kill each other. I don't know what they do in those games, but they learn to kill each other. So I don't know what. It's not
Yeah.
even.
No, that's true. I was at a I for the manual before I got
Uh-uh.
my printer. I used to go to a internet cafes, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Around
yeah, yeah.
to get my thing printed, the manual. And these kids, you're right, they're like 10, 12 years old. They're playing this multiple player games, and they're like, like that, like holy shit! That's their value formation. It's through the internet. It's through these multiple player games, and who knows what kind of values we are teaching our young people for the future, right? Yeah, it's crazy, and that's always been my big question. How do we create a conversation out there that will instill values for humanity, values for kindness, for values, cooperation, collaboration, and just being empathic, right? And I know we're involved in these programs, delivering these programs, but the number of people that, even at the best time that we have, the number of people participate in it is nothing compared to the amount of people we have in this country, right?
Yeah.
As I was just looking back, in the education that we all shared in the past, right? I was so proud at one point that we had like 7,000 people in the country that participated in that program.
Yeah.
But then I looked back and I went 7,000 over 100 million. It's like, my God, hardly even scratch the surface. Right? So, like, yes, it made some difference to 7,000 people, maybe, but to the whole, what's it gonna take? What's it gonna take to alter the conversation? I think media will be one thing. You guys were mentioning, the Sesame Street and then the Filipino version. If people can create content, through media and games and movies and short films and TV shows that you know can instill these kinds of values that actually make a difference.
I was just thinking of something. What if we get 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, 50 times of people who have conversations like this, who are inquiring
Mm.
about their lives and inquiring about what's truth and inquiring about what's inspiring and how do I make a difference to my society, my community, my country, my company, right? What if we have an exponential growth in terms of the number of people having those conversations? I think if we can inspire a lot more of our key leaders, perhaps, our decision makers, perhaps, in enrolling into that possibility of having more of us with that focus, with that attention on our own development for others, then
Mm.
then, then perhaps a revolution from there can what I mean by that is that there's this more and more and more people until it starts becoming a cultural revolution
Yeah,
for
it's like a conversational revolution, right? I think what we could take on is to empower the people who could empower other people to
Right.
create these conversations, right? And we need a cross section of people and not only individuals but also groups of people and organizations, across the board, from government to entertainment to sports and entrepreneurs. Yeah, to really have this conversation, the message, be out there.
There are two
Yeah,
things that came to mind after what you said, Francis. The first is, our friend John Arcelia. Uh,
mhm,
his movie General Luna caused quite a stir when it came out,
mhm,
because I think more than any other film, maybe because it also became available later on Netflix and in other mediums, it caused an awakening somehow. It kind of died down after the hype died down. But for General Luna, it's not even like Jose Rizal or Andres Bonifacio. It's not one of those heroes that we really read about in or study in our, in school. But the portrayal of his acts, I mean, the guy was foul mouthed, but he had a bad mouth, he was badass for a cause. He was saying, and the taglines that he was saying, di ba? Ano nga mga yun, RV, like, bayan o sarili, right? I mean, they resounded so much for a long, long time. So
mm.
that's one medium. I mean, more subsequent movies that came out didn't really, land as well. And the second thing, Aljor, another thing there's a curious phenomenon. Remember those days when we didn't wear seatbelts?
Yeah, I remember those days.
You remember those days here in the
I,
Philippines?
I used to jump from front to back, jump
Yeah,
while the car is
yeah.
moving.
Yeah. So seatbelts, for me, it's like a fascinating phenomenon. I mean, there's some people. My mom refuses to wear a seatbelt because and I always get upset. But
Makukusot yung ano.
yeah, but the thing is, it's amazing how the government, I don't know when it started, but how the government got people to start wearing seatbelts. We are the most, I don't know what the word is in English. We're the most pasaway people on the planet. I mean, we'll get away with anything. But now you see everybody's wearing seatbelts. I don't know what it took for that. I mean, as simple as that. For that life-saving law, rule, regulation to be enforced. Maybe, I mean, just like my mom, like, it's not my life. I mean, my dress is more important than my life. But, I mean, it's widespread. Another thing, also similar to that, I mean, just dovetail. Remember when ambulances had to stay in traffic the same as the rest of us did? Nobody would give way to ambulances. But I'm now beginning to see a shift, even before the pandemic, that now cars are actually, this would never happened before. Never happened before. You would even tail an ambulance, right? So you could get ahead of everybody else. Never happened. People did give way to ambulances. But now I'm beginning to see people are people waking up? Are people realizing, this might be a life? Or are we just slowly becoming civilized?
Chef Justice, it's social media.
Di ba?
It's the pressure of social media and the pressure not to look bad in social media.
Can I just comment on what the Chef Justice said? She said,
Sure.
because the other word that describes Filipinos is particularistic, which is the opposite of universalistic. Universalistic means there are laws that universally apply to everyone. The Pinoy is particularistic. Okay, there are laws, but that law does not apply to me. So, meaning we're always the exception to the rule, which is one characteristic of the Filipino culture.
That's just a freaking lack of integrity, justified.
Yeah, no, I think
I know
because
that's
you
the
can get
rule.
away with it.
We see that everywhere. My gosh, so true though, isn't it? It's like, geez, we see it in our leaders. I mean, yeah, that applies to people, but not to us. It applies to regular citizens, but not to us. At some level, it's like that everywhere else, but it's particularly true here, at least from my observation, right? Chef, what you said is basically a shift in the conversation, right? From I don't want to wear a seatbelt to hey, this matters. So what was that? What was the alteration? If we can get a hold of that somehow, then certain cultural conversations can be shifted and altered, right?
I don't even remember it being enforced, the seatbelt law.
I have a theory. I think there was enough people who was calling it out and holding each other accountable. That
Yeah.
already it started being something that it crossed a threshold where before it was normal not to do it, and then suddenly it's not normal to do it. No, like not to wear seatbelts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that shifts it, right? And somehow we seem to stick with something when it's already there. It doesn't go out anymore.
It reached a tipping point, I think. If you're
I
to
wa-
believe
I was-
Malcolm Gladwell.
That's basically what he was saying, talking about. So that's what it is. What conversation can we create, or what conversation can we empower, such that it reaches a tipping point and it actually alters the culture. That's and who do we enroll in these conversations? Because all there is really a shift in the conversation. Is what we see possible, what we see can be done or can't be done. And when it occurs that it's something that can be done, it happens.
Mm.
But it occurs as that makes no difference, then people won't do anything. So we have to deal with how things occur for people rather than how it really is. And if we can alter the occurring, that would make a big difference. How do we do that?
If I look at 2 points in history, one was there was a time it had to be brewed coffee, like real coffee beans. And then the instant coffee came along and no one wanted to buy instant coffee because the occurring is, oh, you're an irresponsible housewife if what you're going to serve your husband is instant coffee. So the coffee industry had to change the minds of the consumers. And what they did is they packaged it in such a way that instant coffee is so delicious, it's so tempting. And it took a while for them to convince people to switch to instant coffee. And then the other one is there was a time when the coffee industry was dying because everyone was drinking cola. And then Starbucks came along. And then the challenge now is how do you get people interested in coffee again when everyone gets their caffeine now from Coke or Pepsi? And the marketers knew the secret to it. Like, as a matter of fact, Howard Gardner wrote a book on changing minds. And essentially his point was no one makes a decision based on one single event. It takes a series of small nudges to get people to change their minds. And they orchestrated the nudges through funding, through commercials, maybe through education. So influencers who are now on TikTok.
So the question is, how do you influence the influencers?
Yeah, like you said, empower those who can do something about it.
Exactly. Or at least who has the loudest voice or who has the loudest reach, the widest reach, right?
Maybe, Audrey, the other question is, how do you box and how do you put corners inside of empowerment? How do you make that the coffee industry and be able to communicate it in a way that is very easy to get and something that you can nudge people to do?
Yes. Or this thing we're calling value, like which is a very normative thing. That's an interesting challenge for us, and if we can somehow impact any part of that with our work, I think that would make a big difference. Right.
Is that something like fighting fire with fire?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. That's more like Aikido. You're going with the flow, right? Instead of like going against it. And because we're not being like an activist about something, right? We're looking at other ways of altering the conversation, and it's very complex and it's very nuanced, but I think it's possible.
Like, can I ask you guys a question? This has been an itching question for me. What would be your aspirations for the Filipino? What would you want to see? Like, we're talking about values. What values would you want if it's something we create versus something that's been given to us? What would you want that to be?
Grabe, ang ganda ng question. It's a classic. In the world of coaching, that's such a classic, powerful question.
Like maybe that's a good example, right? Like, look at what other countries are doing and think about what is it about the other countries you've seen that you like you know what, that will be amazing in this country.
You know what? Number one that I would like to see, I would like to see a shift from me to we. You know, one of the it's not as even stereotypical. We don't even see it. It's there. But what I've noticed about Filipino culture for the most part is yung lamangan. Kung kailangan makalamang ako, I need to get ahead of you. You see that everywhere in traffic, just in Congress, everywhere. Makalamang lang ako sa'yo.
And it's not even just me, right? It's my tribe, my group.
Escalators
versus all of us.
Right. And you know I don't want to give this as an example because I know why they're like that. The Japanese, for example, they're so considerate of other people. When you see that behind their politeness is a consideration for other people, I'd like to see some of that here in a good way. Like for people to be considerate of each other.
I love that, honey. I just want to say I love that. If I can add to that, I'd like to see a lot of us to be innovators, creatives, inventors, startup entrepreneurs. I want a lot of us to be creating jobs and really standing for our own regions, provinces, and cities, and really creating a mark for that. The way America's been doing it in their 50 states, where you have the intercompetitiveness, but at the same time, the overall power of an economy with 50 different unique. You know, I thought that's something that a lot of our regions would really benefit from.
But I think I agree with what you've said. But I also agree with Honey. The moment individual think from me to we, it's a good foundation to come from. Like the moment we see that whatever it is that we're doing will impact our family, will impact our children, will impact people around us, it's a shift already. The moment we stand for, as a choice, personal choice, to be better, to be good human beings, to be compassionate, I think that's what I want for the Filipinos, for them to get their greatness. Kagaya na sinabi the last time, like to get the bayani in their blood. Because it's there. We've gone through a lot from 300 years, diba, of slavery under this Spanish rule, and we're still here. We're still smiling. We're still finding fun in everything that's happening around us. Yeah, I think now, like for me, personally, the shift is individually getting our own worthiness, getting our own greatness, getting that we all impact one another. We're on the same boat. And it doesn't need to be like a big thing. Like, just a realization na if I throw this trash, it will impact my neighbors. So why would I do that? I don't want a dirty front yard, right? So just keep it and throw it properly. The realization of, small realization and implementing it at home. And then from there, it will, you'll teach it to your children. That's how I see it. Because unless we see the greatness in us, how can we demand it from others? How can we give it to our children? So yeah.
Good.
That's
you guys are creating some really great futures there for the Filipinos. For me, I just want like a minimum level of quality of life, so that it works for everyone. We're only a small country, 100 million people. And if everybody actually work as a collective, like what Jeff said, from me to we, I think we can actually make a difference where, there will be no one living in this country, at least, who is like so marginalized that the disparity of the gap between the people that have and the people that don't have is so wide. If we can just make that gap smaller or get rid of it altogether, it would make a difference.
I'm really, really clear that we need a lot of the citizens to take part. We cannot expect just our government employees, just our civil servants, and just a handful of the entrepreneurs to do that for our culture, to do that for our people. We need a lot of Filipinos to buy into this future and to stand for this future. Because how many are they? They're like there's like 3-4 million of them total out of 100 million. There's like 90 plus million people or not part of who we would usually typically expect to lead this thing, do this work, right? We need,
Right.
we need a huge chunk of that 90 million. Take charge, take lead, and lead this for the country. The me to we.
I think one of the first thing that needs to happen is we need to shift the conversation from it's not possible to that it is possible. In other words, to take the resignation out. Why those 90 million people don't really act and they're so fatalistic, I think, is because of that conversation. Like, nothing's going to change anyways. So why even try, right? We even experience that. And, our life is totally different from the people who don't have anything. So I could just imagine what it's like. And to not even, why should I even think of future when I can't even begin to handle my own present, right? So if we can alter that conversation of, hey, something can be done, something is possible, then we have a fighting chance.
And to build on what the monk said, my vision for the Philippines is one where we don't feel inferior to people from other countries. So, for example, if in a group of people from different countries, the Pinoy doesn't self-efface or blend into the background, but really express what's on their mind, their unique viewpoint and their unique dreams and aspirations.
Yeah, because the flip side of that, coach, is they go the other way too, the ultra mayabang, right? And yeah, so we have work to do,
Lots of work.
huh?
Lots
Yeah,
and lots of
and
work to do.
Let's make a film. Let's make a movie.
yeah, yeah. But it's gonna take films. It's gonna take films with powerful cultural context. It's gonna take content on TV, on the internet, and it's gonna take certain politicians speaking possibility, entrepreneurs speaking this kind of possibility, NGOs, our everyday conversations with people, and for sure, it's gonna take schools
Mhm.
and having this kind of conversation for our young people in primary school, right? So that they're looking for a future that's going to be different, and that they have a say in that future. And I think if they get that early enough, we could have a fighting chance. It's a couple of minutes to go. Any last final thoughts, guys?
I just want to say hello to Noel, Marquez, and JM.
Oh,
They're watching.
okay. Great. Thanks for watching.
Noel Nauheros.
Tell your friends.
Noel and JM Nauhero. Yeah. And of course, JB, who said hi earlier. So what are we going to talk about
JB.
next week? I really want to talk about
Has
those
that,
dramas.
the coach has a suggestion, right, for next week?
Filipino dramas. Oh, he's
I-
Telenovelas.
yeah.
Okay, you know what, guys? Why don't you also start thinking about somebody that you want to invite, like an expert in a field or somebody who's has a voice and opinion in a particular field that we can bring here with us, and then we can have a conversation and chime in on this person's points of view, things like that. Okay, I think that would be kind of interesting.
Expert
Oh,
on
whatever.
telenovelas.
Yeah.
John
Expert in-
Arcelia. Hello, if you're watching, John.
So for those of you who are watching us for the first time, and this is just a conversation with 5 friends who are really committed to make a difference to this country, and basically the conversation is really about what's possible, rather than one conversation which is what's wrong, and then the second conversation is how do we fix it. That's the first 2 conversation normally, is we look at what's possible and what can be done. So that's what this is, and we look at different social issues, cultural issues in the Philippines, and see how we can infuse a certain conversation that could actually make a difference. That's what the third conversation is about. So if you're watching this for the first time and you want to hear more of us just chit-chatting, or if you have any idea what we should talk about, please put on the comment. And don't forget to subscribe, obviously, and give us a like. This is only our 3rd episode, and we will have many, 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 many more. and we bring some interesting people. And this is all
Like and subscribe.
like and subscribe. I'm the Monk, Chef Justice, the Coach, Tech Guru, and Smart Heart. Again, guys, thank you so much for being in this conversation, and we'll see you again next week. Any final thoughts? Anybody? No?
Hit the notification bell as well.
Okay. That's the Coach says. All right, guys, it's 8:30. Thank you very much. And I'm going to end the broadcast and off. Hey, thank you for watching again. And if you're new, welcome to our channel. Please don't forget to subscribe, hit this button over here, and also give us a like, help us with our algorithm. And don't forget to watch these videos over here so you can get to know more about us. Until then, we'll see you next week. Okay? Bye-bye.